Hi, I'm Maurice Monroe, coming at you live from the Carillion sector. I'm just herding these Tandari Marfalites away from the sun so it won't go supernova. I'm doing a favor for my friend. It's just easier for me to call him Bob. Seeing these Marfalites don't move too fast, I got time. Well, until they explode and all, but I'm hitting the CB. Figured I'll tell you a story. Well, Pilgrim, I think we all have had a friend that we love, but we know that deep down, they're kind of a psycho. In my days, in my many lives, I have had a few. And see, here's the thing. Some people don't even know they're crazy until crazy comes a-knocking. So, tonight's story is about an old man who found his calling in life to be an asshole. So there, ladies and gents, sit down in a comfortable chair, because the name of tonight's story is Mr. F.A.F.O by Montsho Shelby. I find it hard to believe there was a time that I didn't like violence, but there was. Life is fragile like that. Most people would rather embrace their doom than live in the ashes, but not me. I found out that the ashes were more my style. The crowbar scraped ground, so that must have meant that I pounded this boy's skull so hard it broke through to the pavement because I don't think I missed. This thought it was cool to make snide remarks about my pants. So many problems in this world can be solved by shutting the fuck up. Though, on the other hand, maybe I should update my wardrobe a little bit. Maybe the kid had a point. That's my problem. If I were to admit to having any flaws, I find it hard to listen to kids, even when they're making points. Call it my age showing if you like. I was gonna need new pants anyways, after all this blood splattered on it, and you can't really get out blood unless you get it in the wash really quickly before it sets in. Oh, this one had friends. 1, 2, 3, 4. No, 3. I think the fourth one is a bystander, but hey, if they want to watch me murder all these assholes, that's fine by me. So long as I'm not in a killing mood by the time I'm done, and you're not doing something stupid like pointing a camera in my face. These kids today, stupid, no survival instincts, no common sense. They think they're invincible, not like in my day. In my day, you could be working a full-time job at 10 and married at 16. But I'm a dinosaur. Maybe I should have had the decency to go extinct and die before my core beliefs were villainized. I can't believe it took me this long to realize how fun being the villain could actually be. While nobody wishes for tragedy to strike, if I'm being honest with myself, I sometimes thank that kid for killing my wife and taking my dignity. Because that one act of unthinkable violence turned me into the man that I always should have been, but never went down the path to meet. If I would have found myself in my 20s, perhaps I would have been a 5-star general by now, raining hellfire on poor migrant indigenous peoples that didn't deserve it. I'm not racist. I was never putting on airs. Even back then, I found that I like killing all peoples equally. It started on a night 2 years back, not unlike this one, other than I was a happily browbeaten, henpecked senior citizen with a passive-aggressive nagging wife that I loved despite the abuse. We were off to see the Rolling Stones play at Soldier Field, and on our way back we got lost. It probably wouldn't have been all that big of a deal to young folk. What with all the modern tech they know how to easily use that I was too stubborn to learn, being 70 at the time. We found ourselves off the expressway in Inglewood in Chicago, which is not the place to be stranded if you don't know where you need to be. Agnes was mouthing off to me in the car, and my blood pressure went up. While I was yelling at her, I hit into the backside of a car, a light tap, but there was some damage. It was a young black kid who went by the name of Papoose with his 3 homeboys. I'm not going to say I deserved what I got, because their response was way over the line compared to my offense, but I mouthed off to them, insinuating that they should have moved quicker when the light changed to something. It's a thing I probably would never have done if Agnes wasn't working my nerves so hard and I was already at a boiling point. They kept it calm for a while, even tried to talk me down, but I accidentally let the N-word slip. That's not me. I don't have hate in my heart for black people. Never have. If I'm being honest, I don't think about black people at all most of the time enough to hate them. This was when the fuse was lit and the chain reaction started. They had to address what happened. Sure, of course they did. And I knew I fucked up the moment I said it. I just wanted to say something that I knew would piss them off. Looking back on it, I was really pissed at Agnes, and they were getting the backlash. So Papoose started with a little light punching. Sure, I get it. I deserved that. I was 70. He had to be 20, if that. So I wasn't going to stand up for too long, of course, and I fell over after the first hit to the gut. When I went down, his boys actually tried to end it and pull his ass off. But no, it wasn't enough that he beat my ass. He had to pull out his cock and piss on me. Agnes was screaming in the car and got out. I, to this day, don't know if it was out of stubbornness or love for me. I wish he hadn't, but by the same note, I wouldn't have made my transformation if she didn't. So she came at them throwing weak punches. I could hear them laughing, but that got her heated, so she tried harder. She managed to get in a good shot to Papoose's chin, and his amusement went away real quick. He shot her. I tried to get up and fight, but he shot me before I made it to my feet. He shot Agnes a few more times on the ground, then shot me a few more times, one in the head. I heard them talking to each other. "Let's get out of here, Papoose." I remember that. Though I was in and out of consciousness, the next guy that pulled up to the streetlight saw me bleeding out and called 911. A black guy. He sat with me. We talked about the stones because the dispatcher told him he had to try to keep me awake. I can't remember what all we talked about, but I'm still alive, so the conversation was at least that good. I had a lot of time to think as I convalesced in the hospital. I had no one. Not one person visited me. We didn't have kids because Agnes was barren, and we didn't have friends because Agnes ran them off by being her. I spent my first week in and out of consciousness, and my second seething and crying. But it was when I made it to my third week that I realized what I was going to have to do, and that was kill myself. I had no business being on the planet. As far as I was concerned, I was just taking up space. I was just a body in a room eating and shitting. I didn't contribute to anything, had no plans. At least when I was with Agnes, I was more or less happy and we could live for each other. But now, there was no one and nobody to care. If my body didn't go out on its own, I was going to buy a gun and end it. So when my time at the hospital was up, I did just that. There was no one to check my state of mind, no one to tell me not to, so that's what I did. I was a cliche. I took a picture of Agnes from the 80s, one where he had gone to this carnival that used to set up on Stony Island called Funtown. I drank and listened to At Last by Billie Holiday. In the distance, I heard a gunshot. I'm not particularly a huge believer in God or signs, but that gunshot was the only reason that I'm still alive. I don't know why it happened, who was shooting, or if anyone died. It just happened at an opportune moment that I was in a contemplative mood. Why should I kill myself alone in a room so that someone could find me in a week when the smell was burning their nostrils, when I could just as easily go out on the street and find the motherfucker who shot me and Agnes and kill him, most likely dying in the process? Everyone lives with an axe over their head. I was just lucky enough to see mine. I'd go out in the street and I'd be shot. If I got the guy, fine. If I didn't, it didn't matter anyways. I had 9 shots in the gun. So long as I saved the last one for myself, I was good. That very night, I went back out to Inglewood and decided to chase the dragon by the tail. I walked up to every street corner in the neighborhood looking for Papoose. Most of the people I found had heard of him, but weren't all that interested in knocking on him to me. As the night went on, I found that my lies were improving. He wasn't a drug dealer, which I just figured, so when I asked to find him for that reason, they knew something was up. He was more an ex-stick-up kid turned assassin. It only took me 2 hours to find the guy that fucked my life, or more like 2 hours for him to find me. He hopped out of his car on a corner that I was asking all these questions about him, and he got the drop on me. I was in the middle of asking this thin drug addict if they had seen Papoose, and a shot rang out from a car. I hit the dirt, not because I was nimble or alert, just because I tried to run but my legs didn't cooperate. I could see Papoose wasn't taking any chances this time. He wasn't allowing any lucky shots to happen tonight. I clumsily pulled my gun and fired from the ground. The commotion stopped. When I looked up, I saw his car rolling into a mailbox, grinding to a halt. I picked myself up off the ground and limped my way over to the wreck. I shot the kid in the throat. A lucky hit. I had never even fired a gun before. He was bleeding out right in front of me. I poured all the rest of my 8 shots into him and went for my clip. When he expired, I felt godlike, but it was by far not enough. I thought a weight would lift when I saw him dead. But for some reason, I saw hope. I felt alive being that close to the edge. I figured I would be dead. Maybe I should have been, but I didn't die. I had been reborn that night. I was something else. The next day, all I could think about was what I did and how it felt to be that powerful. So all I did was work out and go to the range. I did this compulsively. At that point, it was the only thing that was keeping me alive. I went out every night into the city and walked down the darkest alleys, down the darkest streets, waiting for anyone to start shit with me. I didn't find violence every night, and those times I did, murdered anyone that rose a hand to me. In the beginning, it would happen more, but after a few weeks of being out in the streets randomly shooting people the world didn't need anyways, the predators began to recognize me as one of their own. People stopped coming at me. I remember it vividly. A little black kid no older than 18 looked like he was going to cross the street. I smiled. I couldn't wait, but one of his 2 friends smelled the stench of death on me. Nah, not him. Fuck that old white man. Alright, nigga, be my guest. Fuck around and find out. I laughed so hard when he said that they heard me from across the street and they decided better of it. So I took the name. If anyone lives to tell it, sometimes they get to hear it. I moved past random violence because it was no longer a challenge. The threat of death wasn't present. The kill was too fast. I had to really begin to challenge myself. Whether I died or they killed me was largely irrelevant to me at this point. The idea that I may be killed was probably a big part of why I wanted to do it in the first place. I started going for entire gangs, entire criminal organizations, and I wasn't all that subtle about it. The police largely didn't seem to care about me because I knew my place and only went after people they didn't mind dying. That changed, and accidents did happen. I was clearing out a house of drug dealers, pretty much kicked in the door and shooting everyone in the house. Up until then, I hadn't crossed the cops. Not because I cared, it just worked out that way. As I shot these 4 assholes, I came out of the front, and there was a cop there. He got the drop on me. It was unlucky, but with the way I was going, it was only a matter of time before that happened. I'm not going to say that he would have just shot first if I was a young black kid, but I'm also not saying that. He hesitated for a split second, and I was beyond caring about life and death at this point, so I didn't. I drew down on the cop and gave him an extra hole in the head, but not before he winged me in the leg. I got away, but this made a chain reaction of events, a public outcry that kicked off the next phase of my evolution. I didn't feel anything shooting the cop. I figured that I would consider him as an innocent that didn't deserve it. But I didn't. Killing that cop was just as satisfying as killing a criminal. I could no longer drape myself in the cloak of good intentions. The only thing that killing that cop changed was my perspective, not my resolve. I was going to keep rolling the dice until I crapped out. The city set up a trap for me, and I fell into it. No, I walked into it because I was curious if I could get out of it. They made a few obvious street criminal organizations, and I just went there. I figured I'd make my last stand. It was time. A year of rampage was the equivalent of 10 years of square living. I was about 72, but that made me 82 by murder standards. I had bought several assault rifles and body armor from various trade shows and had a decent amount of money from all the drug dealers I had killed. I brought every gun I had because I wasn't going to make it out of there, and I wanted to fire every gun I had, especially the ones I hadn't got around to. A lot of people go wrong when they go looking for the meaning of life and not the meaning of their life. This was the meaning of my life, this murder, chaos. I entered the modest house. That was an obvious sting. I had on my heavy armor. I clocked a few sharpshooters on the roof, but I put on my helmet to make the random headshot a bit harder. I kicked in the door, and at least 5 undercover cops unloaded on me. It didn't matter. I could barely feel it through this armor that made me feel like a turtle. I sprayed the room with my Tech 9, sweeping through couches, tables, and TVs, finding flesh, turning people's on switch to the off position. The cops converged on the house, but I was ready for this. I walked outside to face oblivion with a smile on my face. I got riddled with bullets. The gun smoke was so thick, it was as if I were wading through a fog. They say I killed 8 people in that assault, and I found that a triumph of the human spirit because I shot a hell of a lot more than that. They finally put me down after a 1:30 standoff, but for some reason I didn't die. You'd think at my age I would have just died for the sake of it. In the hospital, I got a curious nurse that wasn't the ones I got from earlier. She slipped in real low key and spiked my IV. I saw her do it. I didn't do anything about it. I was ready to die anyway, and if she had some sort of beef with me, so be it. I slipped away in the hospital and woke up in another hospital. A man came to me in a suit. He said the world didn't know about me. For all intents and purposes, I was dead and buried. I didn't say anything because I just wanted to see how far it would go. But these people didn't fuck around. It was agents of our government that did it. I was old enough and psychotic enough that I fit the bill for this program they were doing. They had some sort of murder tryouts. That's the only thing I could call it. They asked me if I wanted to be useful to the country, and I said sure, whatever. What did I care? I was looking for a purpose a year ago, and I had found it. So if this sort of help required me to kill people, I was rah-rah America. They almost immediately put me through this rigorous drug therapy routine the very next day. They put me out in a place with temperate forests and told me to kill anything that wasn't them and not to stop until they said the password of Red Rose. I didn't mind it. Whatever this was the 3rd time in my life. I just figured that was it. But once again, I surprised myself and lived. I stalked through the forest with almost animal instincts. I was more than human, somehow faster, stronger. I had never felt better in my life. The first guy I encountered was some guy, maybe he was a soldier, young guy, clean cut. I'm guessing he had the same orders as me because we saw each other and it was all punching, kicking, and maiming. He was good, probably trained as a fighter, but most likely not as a killer. Me, on the other hand, I was a killer, not a soldier, a policeman, or even a gangster. There was no state of mind that I found acceptable other than kill. I no longer belonged in polite society. He hurt me bad, but I poked his eyes out and broke his neck. Happily, in fact. Then I realized the assignment. They were looking for killers. They didn't care about someone that took orders or could do diplomacy. They were looking for results in the field of battle. I had a rather long day, but I killed my way through 7 men of various ages and skill levels to be the last man standing. I had a chip in my head that they could push and kill me from wherever it was they needed to. They, in no uncertain terms, told me as such. From that moment on, I became what they needed me to be. I was their super assassin, a machine of murder, and I didn't care either. I got to see the world, meet interesting people, then kill them, and live the life I never knew I wanted. They drop me in a random place, give me a random picture, a few details, and tell me to kill them. I did. I didn't ask why. I didn't care if they had kids or a wife. I would figure a way to do it and just do it. Then a few days after I did the deed, they'd randomly find me wherever I was in the world. You may think that I disobeyed or had that one mission where I was unwilling to agree, but I didn't. After one random mission in a Middle Eastern country, they just pushed the kill switch and exploded the back of my head. No explanation, no warning. Whatever they needed me for, they didn't anymore. I didn't die. Oh, it hurt. I was out for a long while, but I came back. Whatever they gave me put me back together, and I was back in the world of the living, back from the dead for a 4th time. So the question now is, what does a murderer do when he can't be killed and can't be reined in? And yes, the answer is whatever he wants. Whatever he wants. I'm in the world now, anywhere my heart desires. Next time you think you're walking up on a kindly old man, who knows? Fuck around and find out. Ooh, dog it, what a tale. I wonder if Mr. F.A.F.O is still out there. I mean, whatever the government gave him definitely pumped him up. Oh, hold on there, partner. The Marfa lights are making their move, and it's time for Maurice Monroe to make his. I gotta go, people. But I can say before I do, know who you're fucking with before you fuck with them. Yeah!